Hey there everybody, welcome back to Bench Proof. As always, my name is David. Today we're going to be doing a pie crust. My grandmother actually requested that I make this video. And I'd been kind of thinking about it for a while anyways, because I know pie crust is one of those things that people seem to struggle with trying to make at home. And so I decided to go ahead and make it because it just so happens that me and a bunch of my friends are all getting together to do our own little potluck Thanksgiving. So I told them that I would bring a lemon meringue pie and a pumpkin pie, and thought that this would be a perfect opportunity to shoot the pie crust video that I've been wanting to do for about a month or so now. Anyways, very easy to do pie crust. People seem to be afraid of it because it is easy to mess up, but when you know why it's easy to mess up, it's really simple to make. And that sounds complicated, but I promise you it's easy. The main thing that people do is add too much water, or they don't keep their dough cold enough, or the ingredients that go into their dough cold enough. And those are easily fixed by just keeping things refrigerated, keeping your water, ice cold, putting your fats in the freezer before you make your dough for about a half hour to make sure that they're very chilled, things like that. Easily fixed, but if you don't necessarily know that that's the problem, obviously you're not going to think about that as being the solution to a problem that you never knew that you had in the first place. It's very easy. There's just a few ingredients. You need 6 tablespoons of butter cut into cubes, 2 tablespoons of either lard or vegetable shortening. I personally don't do pork products, so I do vegetable shortening. If you'd like to substitute lard for the shortening, feel free. It's still just the 2 tablespoons. Use whatever other kind of rendered fat that you would like. Like I said, I put vegetable shortening. That's just me. I will admit it tastes better with lard. You also need a cup of all-purpose flour, about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and let's just say go ahead and ice down a 1/4 cup of water. You're not going to need that much, I promise you that, but just go ahead and ice it down, get it getting cold. And it's there just in case you do happen to need it, because like many other baked goods, this all depends on humidity of the day, temperature, all that kind of stuff. It is made in the food processor. You'll notice mine's a little bit dirty. Like I said, I'm making 2 pies, so I already made the first pie crust dough in the processor. I'm just going to add my ingredients and make the second one now for you on film. So sorry, it's a little bit dirty. There's no point watching it out when I'm about to make the exact same thing again. Also, since it is in the food processor, this might be a little bit loud. I'm going to try my best to edit it down. Do some sound mixing, kind of take the volume of the food processor down in post-production, but if I can't seem to do that, I'll stick an annotation like up here somewhere to let you know, go ahead and knock that volume down. The last thing I want is for you to get your eardrums blown out, just trying to see, how to make a pie crust. So into the food processor goes our 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and our 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we're going to pulse those a couple times just to get the flour and the salt combined. Nothing real crazy there. Then we're going to add our fat. This is the 6 tablespoons of butter and the 2 tablespoons of lard that have been in the freezer for about a half hour now. You're going to want to pulse that until it gets to a mealy texture. You've got some larger clumps of fat still in there, but most of it has been taken in by the flour. Those larger pockets of fat are why you want your fat to be cold, because when you roll your dough out, you want those little pockets of fat. That way, as it bakes and they melt, that's what creates like the tenderness and the flakiness of the pie crust. If your fat just melts into your dough while you're making your dough, you're not going to get that. So that's why you try and keep things as cold as possible while you're working with your pie crust. So we need to add our water now. I've got just a cup of ice water. I'm just going to kind of drizzle some in with a spoon here. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons or so to start with, and then give that a couple of pulses. I'm going to go ahead and add another 2 tablespoons. If you want, you can put your ice water in like a little spritzer bottle and just spray the top instead of doing it with the spoon. That works equally as well. I just don't happen to have one of those on hand right now, so I'm doing the spoon method. But whatever works for you is fine. Alright, and it's getting pretty close, but I'm going to add just a little bit more water to it. I think this should be good. That's perfect. See how it started to pull away from the bowl there and actually form a dough? That's what you want to see. You want to make sure not to put too much water in this though. It's still going to be a little bit crumbly, and that's fine because the next step is to refrigerate it for a half an hour. Wrapped up, and you can either put it in a Ziploc bag or in saran wrap. Obviously I'm doing mine in saran wrap. Just kind of form it into a little bit of a ball. Down on the saran, and then this will refrigerate for a half an hour before we roll it out and put it onto our pie dish. Depending on what kind of pie you're making, like I said, I'm making two. I'm making a lemon meringue pie and a pumpkin pie. The lemon meringue pie requires that I blind bake the pie crust, which means that I bake it in the pan with no filling in it whatsoever. Alright everybody, welcome back. Our dough has been refrigerating for a half an hour now, and so that means it's time to roll it out. And put some flour down on my work surface here. Flour my hands up. Also, now don't judge me. There's a legitimate reason for having this bottle here. I don't actually own a rolling pin. Mainly because I know that between girlfriends and cooking other things, like I'm gonna buy wine anyways. So why spend extra money on a rolling pin when I can just roll it out with an empty wine bottle? So that's what the bottle is doing here. But we're gonna take our dough, put it down in our flour there, get a little bit of flour up top, and we're gonna start just by hand, just kind of pressing it out. Don't need the rolling pin quite yet. Don't need all of this flour either, so I'm going to move a little bit out of the way. You want to try and use as little flour as possible, just enough so that it doesn't stick, but not so much that it toughens up the dough. What we're going to do is I'm going to roll this out to about a 10 or 11 inch circle, or the 10 or 11 inch amoeba. You know, just enough that you've got enough to cover all of the pie, all of the pie dish and the edges. Have enough extra crust to do, the pretty little designs that people like to do on the edges of their pie crusts. The little finger grooves and things like that. I'm just going to see where we're at here. Actually, it looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now, set my rolling pin out of the way, is take my bench scraper, and I just go underneath it and kind of make sure that it's off of the table all the way around. Because that's the last thing you want after doing this work and being so close to a nice pie crust, is for it to stick on the table when you're trying to transport it into your pie dish. So now fold it in half and then fold it into quarters. Set it to the side. Move that flour there out of the way. And I pick up my quartered pie dough and just unfold it right in the pie dish. Kind of, push it into the corners there. You might need to do a little bit of patchwork. You might have torn during rolling a little bit, or you might need to just kind of make the edges a little bit prettier, across the pie dish here. But once I do this, I will put it into the 425 degree oven for about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes. A lot of people do parchment paper and pie weights when they blind bake a pie, and I don't know what my problem is. Excuse me. But for some reason, every time I try and do that, the parchment paper sticks to the pie crust, and you got to pull the weights out after 10 minutes like you're supposed to, and it just rips the entire bottom of the pie crust. So I just don't do it. If that's how you've learned how to do it, by all means do it. And I don't know if I just make a weird pie crust and it doesn't take well to that kind of thing. I don't really know what the problem is, to be perfectly honest with you. So I just don't bake it with any weights in there. I do dock it just a little bit with a fork, but even then I don't go all the way through. Like I said, because I'm going to have very liquid filling going into this. I don't want to pierce all the way through and have the filling run out the bottom. So I'll do just a little bit, just very shallow with a fork, just to get a little bit of steam pockets in there so that it can rise out. But like I said, very shallow with the fork, not even going all the way through the crust. But I will bake it at 425 for 20 to 25 minutes. I'll check on it after the 20 minutes, and if I think it needs to get a little bit more brown, I'll leave it in there for a little bit longer. So we'll stick this in the oven. Anyways, I can stop rambling now. We'll stick this in the oven, like I said, 425. I'll show you the progression of that through the time lapse like I normally do.